And looks like we're live.
Oh, hi, Peter.
Nice to meet you, Dean. Okay, so we have today on the Supply Chain Podcast, Dean Fleischmann of IPC APAC.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. So how about you give us a little introduction on what IPC is and what do you do there as a head of sourcing, is that right?
Yes, I'm currently the head of strategic sourcing at IPCA. IPCA is quite a unique organisation. We run the procurement and distribution services for all of Subway's restaurants across Asia Pacific in the markets in which they play. So very interesting business. We're procuring products, we're contracting those, our 4PLs are then buying those and then distributing those to stores across the region. Lots of different markets, lots of different complexities, but we move millions and millions of cartons every year on behalf of the Subway franchisees.
Yeah, well, as someone who spent a lot of money and time at Subways, eat fresh, they're a good little promo for you guys there. So it's interesting that it's a franchisee business, right? So basically they don't get to decide any of these what's being shipped. They just kind of pick and choose from there. And that's my understanding of that. Is that so? Everything falls on you guys to kind of keep all these Subway outlets running across Asia Pacific. How many outlets do you guys have?
Yeah, so we service just over 3,500 stores across Asia Pacific. And to your question, the Subway is a franchise system.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that on the other side of the equation is IPCA is actually owned by the Subway franchisees.
Oh, okay.
So it's completely independent and there's no conflict of interest. So our business and our intention is to maximise the profitability of our franchisees. So anything that's over and above our recovery of our costs, we actually give back to the franchisees to improve their profitability as they own our business at the end of the day.
All right. Well, I'm interesting to hear that, and I definitely see more Subways popping up all over the place. So I guess that's due to, in part, the work that you do. So yesterday you were on a panel here at Supply Chain Week. You talked about in that one was about retaining and then hiring for specifically the industry, the supply chain logistics industry. So is that also under your purview as well as the
so as from an organisational perspective, we run both procurement and supply chain services on behalf of the franchisees. The procurement is all done internally, and then distribution is we're responsible for the contracting of the providers, but not the physical distribution of the goods. Those come through our 4PLs, which operate under 3PL models in certain markets and instances. The recruitment and retention of staff to perform those services fits under my team's responsibility. And then as we were sort of describing yesterday, there are a range of challenges in the industry on not only attracting, but developing and retaining those staff within the supply chain.
Yeah, okay. So that's a great segue into that. So you're an expert on that. What are the top few challenges that makes it difficult to kind of draw people in? I think yesterday we had a couple of chats where they said people don't naturally gravitate towards supply chain; they kind of fall into it. Is that a fair point? And what are the challenges you guys are seeing?
This is a really great topic, Peter. If you do a show of hands in any room, whether it be in the procurement space and or the supply chain space, people have somehow found the profession. So people who have found the profession and love the profession tend to always stay in the profession.
Right.
But when you look at it take a step back from the profession, is that you can't go to university and just do a procurement degree.
Yeah.
You can't go to university and in most cases do a supply chain degree. They're starting to come up and certain programs at university or in TAFE are starting to incorporate some elements, but it tends to be fairly small.
Right.
So the way in which we need to attract, develop, and then retain in the market, the practices due to some of those constraints are needing to change.
Yeah. No, fair enough. As in, I also kind of fell into it in some of my previous roles, and that the companies were in supply chain up and down the various part of the value chain there. So, and I did there was a professor in my business school that was teaching supply chain management. I think at that point I didn't think too much about it. I'm like, okay, it's good to learn, but I never really thought I would end up being in it. So but then how would you say that could be changed? As in, like, should there be more like outreach from the industry to get the tertiary institutes to get in? As in, would that be one way to solve that problem? Is that maybe it's more of a supply would be something be helpful?
Yeah, so we need to create demand for the profession in itself. So I think one of the really important parts is it probably starts at the grassroots of the higher education system.
Yep.
That actually informing those students around the importance and the opportunity within the industry, which is then supported by potentially formal education as an avenue into the sector. It doesn't necessarily mean you need the formal education.
Yeah.
If formal education is not someone's chosen pathway into a profession, then having organisations that have programs to be able to introduce individuals at sort of a ground root, develop the skill sets, provide them with supplementary training and mentorship to be able to improve their capability and capacity within those organisations, then both methods, and not one way is better than the other, is critically important to evolve the profession and bring people through at sort of a stronger rate. Because at the moment, the challenge of just a shortage is chronic.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard to find people that can do more of the strategic work. There are definitely individuals that can do some of the more sort of repetitive kind of processes through some training and development. There are lots of really good systems that people can operate and you can onboard, but you still need to ultimately make it a place of interest to even acquire that resource at the moment.
Yeah, there's a few good points, and then I'll try to break it down a little bit there. So like what you mentioned is that you don't have as many people who are kind of like interested, which is we talk about the demand, and then the schools can kind of like step in there. But maybe next one is around retention, as with every industry, people kind of like drop out. What would be a way to kind of like retain staff, not just in the industry but also within the company? Because obviously people will move from industries out or into different companies. What would you recommend things they could do there?
This is a really great question, Peter, and we started the conversation discussing actually just attracting people in. Most of the professionals, even at supply chain week here, and what's very interesting is that they've been in the industry for a long time.
Yeah.
If we use that as a point of reference on then the retention strategy, there's a couple of things that come to mind. The first is that people want the ongoing professional development. So within supply chain, there's so many aspects, from demand planning to forecasting to logistics to warehousing, etc. When you look at that from a procurement lens, running RFPs, RFQs, contracting, all the way through to strategic supply management, as an example, are all different skill sets that are required sort of through your professional development. So organisations that are really investing in the enablement tools for professional development through on-the-job, through formal training, and then through mentorship. And a couple of the speakers yesterday spoke about actually people having really strong mentors being a very key element of professional development, where it's a safe environment to talk about challenges and opportunities and approaches and draw on that experience. I don't think there's anyone here over the last couple of days that actually has got the identical role. Talking to different colleagues, you hear on their challenges are different to yours, some similarities, but there's a lot of big differences. So the organisations that have the enablement tools that can work through the sort of 70-20-10 kind of principles, those kind of individuals are more likely to stay and retain with those organisations. And I was just talking to someone from an organisation, and they were saying one of the most amazing things in their business is when it comes to awards at the end of the year, people have been there 15, 20, 30 years in the same profession, but what is common is that they've been given this opportunity to grow and develop.
Right, okay. Well, that's definitely interesting. And just a quick side note, best place to learn more about supply chain is to come to Supply Chain Week. So see you guys in 2026. We'll be back again. Maybe here, the other thing that you talked about, a key thing that we kind of keep touching and everything. So two things that I'll bring up. One is around AI, and the next one I'm going to talk about is sustainability. So we'll get there. So like what you mentioned, in different parts of the supply chain, you have those that are of course in the leadership roles and those in a repetitive, more like tasks. Like, do you see AI being able to impact both these types of like groups?
Absolutely. So I think from a leadership perspective, it's all about creating the visibility and the buy-in to the process. The change that can come with the AI engines are very, very significant. At an operational level, when you've got the buy-in and been able to demonstrate and show those team members the benefits of what they're doing. We saw and we've heard of different tools that can assess suppliers as an example. They can look at financial risk, they can look at social responsibility risk or ESG topics around modern slavery, etc. For an individual to complete those tasks can take weeks, if not months, to do an assessment over a supply base. With AI, effectively you can press a button and put in a couple of sort criteria and there's your answer. So through that sort of onboarding process, you can say, well, if we can take this mundane task out, which is absolutely necessary to manage a supply chain in a more effective and risk-adverse position, then that's great. But you can then use that time to fulfill a role more deeply in other activity that you don't currently do to the level that you may require. So it's this ongoing evolution of when something gets better, you create efficiency and capacity to do other things. And this is almost a pathway to professional development that you can take away process and make it strategy.
Yeah. So the other one that I wanted to ask, so would AI be able to help with so as we also said that manpower, or at least the people entering the industry is kind of reduced. So would it be possible for AI to help with that endeavor as well? Because more of the tasks, I think the last I was at retail fulfillment and we were able to see who was that? I think was some of the companies that had automation as well as AI that will be able to do pick and pack for warehousing. And is that something that would also help with this labor shortage or labor crunch here?
Absolutely. So I think if AI can be used to create productivity differences, the incremental number of resources you need will reduce. However, as growth comes, growth will require more resource. So it's sort of in the short term, if AI can deliver what it's intended to deliver, that sort of gives the industry greater opportunity to build the pipeline for the future. But as we've heard in some presentations yesterday, if you look at the trucking industry as an example, it's a very aged workforce, and that aged workforce, since COVID, is retiring at a rapid rate. So even finding ways to attract the younger generation into becoming, a truck driver, even with formal qualifications, around that, is very, very challenging. So we're always going to need trucks. There are different modes of transport, whether it be rail or whether it be by sea, that sort of fulfill a gap, but it doesn't resolve the requirement on, particularly in a country like Australia where tyranny of distance challenges are very significant and need to be addressed. 4,000 kilometres from Queensland to Western Australia is a challenge. And having one rail line and sort of irregular coastal shipping is not ideal.
Okay. And talking about as I said, the other part that we do tend to touch in a lot of our chats is around sustainability. So maybe can you share a little bit about what IPC does around that too, as we all try to transit into a more greener supply chain? What is some of the things that you guys have seen, and what do you think that what are the things that you guys are doing in that space?
So we do a lot, and maybe I'll talk to sort of some of the types of things that we're doing at a sort of a procurement lens, because there's a lot of opportunities, as well as there's some opportunities when we look at it from a logistics perspective. So when we look at our procurement space on our critically important products, there's this topic of right shoring. And what do we mean by right shoring is like, where are we producing the product to have the lowest carbon footprint and building in place sort of best in class supplier capability and capacity. So if we have a market where a supplier is in, let's say, the USA, we are having to ship that product to different markets around Asia Pacific. Very good quality product, but you effectively have a carbon footprint with cost versus actually could we actually develop capability within a local market, take out the significant freight component, reduce lead times, but emulate product that's as good and or better than what we receive from another market. So we're continually assessing our products from a right shoring perspective. We also do a lot of work in terms of what I would call optimization or re-engineering. So using and assessing things like pallet utilization, carton counts, optimizing store usage to carton size to maximize and reduce the number of cartons that are being delivered to store, but also the way they are received in terms of the intake, in terms of the warehousing and distribution, so that trucks are running at maximum weights, maximum capacities, and everything is optimized as finely and as intricately as possible to deliver that value. And with any part of that supply chain, you're reducing plastics and packaging, you're reducing carbon footprints, and you're building best-in-class capability and process with our key supplier partners. When we go deeper into the supply chain, the way in which we work with our suppliers is critically important.
Right.
We don't work with all our suppliers in the same way. We actually go through really rigorous processes in segmenting our suppliers to understand who is strategic, who is core, and who may be, let's say, developmental or transactional. Within each segment, we do different things. So if you have a strategic supplier, you want to be engaging very frequently in terms of quarterly business reviews. You also may want to be doing annual planning days and defining what initiatives we're actually going to jointly embark in, and be contracting in ways that deliver that mutual value. It's not about the take, it's about sharing in the investments to deliver long-term value. So in an area like ESG, we were recently with a supplier last week, and they were sharing with us their joint investment with us around our product set in something like, if we look at solar panels or biogas, this particular manufacturer by the end of 2025 will actually be able to self-sustain 5 days a week, both all their energy and their gas supplies through their tens of millions of dollars that they are putting into their manufacturing site. So they are net. Their baseline in terms of their delivery isn't about a 20, 30, 40, 50% reduction. It's a 100% reduction on their current requirements. They do have plans to put batteries in to run their freezers and some of their manufacturing sites when the sunshine isn't there. However, on daylight hours, they literally are pulling nothing off the grid or any gas and or power. So those are the kind of investments and collaboration that we will try to work with our suppliers to really make a meaningful impact within the ESG topics.
Oh, fantastic. Wow, I'm just happy to hear that, as in that's a big goal that this industry can definitely learn from that example and more. I think we're at this point where I also want to talk about you as a person and to kind of get people to know who you are, who Dean is. So I have a section called Chain Reaction. We're going to ask a few simple questions, personal questions. Just a heads up, it's going to be. So I looked through your resume, or at least on LinkedIn. You used to be at, I think it was Aldi's as well, was it previously?
Yes, that's correct.
How was that? I think that, besides Subway, I think that would be something that most of our listeners will be very familiar with. So what were you doing there, and what was the work there?
So I was with Aldi for nearly 12 years. I joined Aldi as a buying director. I used to buy detergents and cleaners, eggs, and a whole range of those special buys down the centre of the store. And amazing opportunity. When I joined, there were 200 stores, and when I left, there were over 600 stores. So being on a journey of growth and self and professional development was quite amazing. When I started, our categories were tens of millions of dollars. And for both myself and for others, by the time we left, they were hundreds of millions of dollars. So the responsibility with a very customer-centric focus was incredible in terms of delivering that value. Over time, I got to work on some really amazing projects. One of my greatest career highlights actually comes from Aldi. I had the opportunity to set up a team called the Value Chain Optimization Team. And there we were like internal consultants. We worked with our buyers, buying directors and their teams, and strategic suppliers to identify value across the value chain. So whether it be ESG, whether it be product re-engineering, whether it be long-term business plans, we actually were looking at how do we identify these opportunities and work together in a very collaborative way to solve lots of different pain points and opportunities for both organisations. It was absolutely incredible. And then over time I became a group director. So there I used to run the freezer buying category. I had quality, corporate responsibility and value chain optimization teams across the portfolio. And what was great there was when you were driving both national and global strategies, you could use the likes of the freezer team to test and refine opportunities before we scaled that to the business.
Yep.
And it provided an incredible opportunity to have really meaningful impact in ESG topics, but also at a customer level.
Yeah, wow. I think that's amazing, as in to kind of see where you can go. So while we're on that, what would you say to somebody like, who's trying to come into industry? What would be a word of advice you would give them if, let's say, they were just starting out in supply chain?
I think if you're starting out in supply chain, and there's one attribute that I think really makes or breaks you in this industry. If you love the pace and you're a curious person, the curiosity that can unlock opportunities in this industry is unbelievable. And both the professional and team camaraderie that comes out of that process when you are in the industry is very contagious. And it's sort of where I started my comment before, is when you talk to colleagues in the industry, when you're in it and you love it, it's very hard to get away from it. So, I just recommend anyone that comes in, whether at grassroots, mid-level or at senior level, just stay curious. And the curiosity drives a very significant passion in terms of what you're able to do and achieve both professionally and for the organisations you may work for.
Yeah, nice. Stay curious. I like that. What do you do to relax? What is your way to cope with the stress of the world? What do you do?
Yeah, I do a lot of things. I have a beautiful wife and 3 kids, and they keep us very busy as a family. But outside of that, love the water, so get down to the beach quite often. I'm quite an avid cyclist, so I try and get out, at least once or twice a week. So I'm a bit of a weekend warrior on the bike. Right. And I love socialising and cooking. So if it's around friends and eating and outdoor activities, that very much sums up what I love to do.
All right. Where would you go for holiday? As in, or a place you have been, or a place that you would like to go?
Yep. What's great around my role around Asia Pacific is I love Asian cuisine and all Asian countries and the culture that comes with that. But I also love Europe. So I've fallen in love with Italy. So I've been to there a couple of times in more recent years. Yeah. And recently just came back from 3.5 weeks in Italy at the beginning of this year, and I absolutely love the cuisine, the history, and everything it has to offer.
Okay. What would be a book that you think everybody in your industry or anybody should read? What would be a book that left an impression on you?
Yeah, a book that does resonate with me in this industry that is hectic. I think would describe it. There's not much time off. Is the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective Managers. It's
Stephen Covey.
There's some really interesting points around how you sort of can use the efficiency and capacity and keep your mindset in a very good place to ensure that you can actually deal with the highs and lows of the industry. This is an industry that's always on, so how you balance that from a self-awareness and resilience perspective is really important. and keeping on top of some of those habits that are good, ultimately ensures that you can achieve that.
Oh, right, that's a good book. Last question. So, what was the last thing you ordered online that was delivered through our lovely supply chain?
The last thing I ordered was a range of brown goods for. I recently moved homes, and it's unbelievable how you can order a fridge, a washing machine, a microwave online, sight unseen. They're quite big purchases.
Yeah.
And they can just within 24, 48 hours literally be at your doorstep, coming from interstate, be unwrapped, be put in place, and leave without sort of having to even venture on your way to the stores. So I'm still always bewildered by how quickly some of those things happen. The other day I ran out of ink toners for my printer, and what was amazing was I just went onto Amazon. I'm a Prime member there, ordered some toners, and I'm still bewildered by how within not even 2 hours that was at my doorstep.
Right.
And
wow.
you just wonder, like, the technology and the efficiency.
Exactly.
I think that's sort of coming from Western Sydney, and I'm near Bondi, and the ability to travel all that distance is incredible.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dean. Appreciate the insights. Really love, how you broke down how we can retain, attract attention to our shrinking. Well, not shrinking, but the higher needs we need for the industry. And appreciate all the chat we had. So thank you so much for joining me here.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you.